This conference will now be recorded.
This year's facility plan 2019 for UIN06, and I will start with introductions. Myself, Amber Leach with planning, and my role is to help work on the documentation with the district for today's facility plan.
I'm Raj Dami. I'm the accounting analyst here, and I basically help everybody with a little bit of everything, especially things that concern the database.
I'm Paul Severson. I'm here providing support for the project management team, in particular Lance Johnson today. I provide leadership, coordination, and calibration so that we're consistent in delivery of our services to the districts.
Troy?
I'm Troy Decker, planning. My main role is quality control, make sure our facility plans contain what they need to according to state statute, rules and regs, and then making sure that we capture all the information in such a way that we're able to develop budgets, recommendations to the commission and to the select committee, and then also just to make sure we have clear communication and in such a way that we can communicate important things to the select committee and commission down the road.
I'm Lance Johnson. I'm project manager for the school facilities. I work with the districts and their projects.
I'm Ring Crane, the facilities director for UIN County School District number 6.
Tony Gillis, business manager for UIN School District number 6.
Colby Gold, superintendent.
Carolyn Gillis, maintenance secretary.
Guys, out of all the hard work that you guys put into this year's facility plan, and as we go through the facility plan, if there is anything, we've done a lot of work on the front end to provide the information. We're going to go ahead and note those. And if there's anything further that you would like to interject, please do so as we go through. As you start to look at this, we've got our tracts and deeds and land, and we've went through GIS sites and worked really hard with Charlie Kaufman going through those and validating it for our databases. And as you see here, we've got the graphics from a Google Earth standpoint to represent those. You've validated that your tracts and deeds were good. You currently have no land leases, and you show that you have no land disposition or land acquisition going forward from the previous year or into the next year. And we have noted that in the school facilities notes that the AIM database is updated. Okay, moving right into the property profile side of it. We're looking at the property profiles here that has been inserted. You've indicated that these are correct, and as you all know, this does go and it does impact your major maintenance and also your WDE operations maintenance payments as well. As down here, you currently do not have any building leases, and you did indicate that your enhancements were correct and you have no further changes, and we've also indicated on the SFE notes that the AIM update or AIM database is updated at this time. So we get into moving on into the district appropriation update, and currently we've got listed here the 2 projects capital projects in the report. 1161 is the first report that we have here. We list here that you have no funding to go further into the addition. And we have noted here, design what is completed through 95% as of February 2016. Capacity is at 79%, 71 seats available. As CD will revert funds at this time. When capacity percent increases and the school qualifies for a budget recommendation, then SCD will recommend completion of the design and potential construction funding. Districts, do you have any other comments on this?
That's the URI edition. No.
Okay. Going into the next project we have listed was the 2776 project, which is your Lyman High School roof replacement. The project you say is complete. Project we listed here for specific was completed on 2017. Warranty period has passed and funds will be reverted is what we've got stated in SFP notes. Is there any other comments or questions on this section?
No.
Okay. So we get into security, and Lance, I'm going to let you go ahead. I've pulled it up to that, and I'll let you take over from here and let me know when you want page down.
Did we lose Lance?
I hope we didn't lose Lance.
Sorry, no, I had mute on. I had gone through the whole thing already. Starting over, this year in legislation, there's $4.9 million request for additional security projects. And what you see on the screen there is a list of the 20 identified security elements in the security assessment. And in the past, they only funded up to 8 of those elements if you had the need in your district. So the potential funding coming up this year, you will be able to use that on any of these elements. And with that, you still have the opportunity to request to move money from one element to another. And Tony, you and I had talked about that on an upcoming project for two-way communication. And when I'm finished here, I'll just ask where we're at with that. But also, as we've discussed that in 2017, fiscal year 17-18 and fiscal year 19-20, you were allowed to expend up to 10% of your major maintenance towards security. And with the discussions have been in legislation that in the coming year 21-22, that may not be the case. So we've got to keep an eye on your 10% security funding, and we want to make sure you spend it appropriately to benefit the district, and we just don't want you to overspend because there may not be a way to reimburse that money back.
So Lance, that stays in there whether the legislature approves additional 10%. Right now, we will be able to keep that in just like the old 8% money. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the two years, fiscal years 17-18 and 19-20, that is correct, Tony. That'll remain.
Okay.
And so, as you're aware that if you want to move money, you just need to, in writing, acknowledge where the funds need to be going, and that there'll be no back funding. But in this case, if they approve that $4.9 million to use on any of the 20 elements, then obviously some of that money could be used on something that if you move money from one to another element. The SFD will honor the agreements. The School Facilities Division will honor change agreements made by the SFD that are captured in the written record. The School Facilities Commission and Select Committee, they've had concern about the slow deployment of the funds. And obviously you guys are starting to get going now because of the discussions you and I have had, Tony, with your two-way communication. And there's also available funds through Homeland Security and Department of Justice on the grants. So, Tony, I'm going to ask you now, though, where are you at with your two-way communication that we started a couple weeks ago?
I'm working on writing bid specs and it's for an RFP to put out and then get that advertised. So in the next couple of weeks, we should have the bid specs written and advertisement in the paper so that we can get that RFP out and get back in. So I'm hoping that we have everything and prices back in by mid-March, and that to get approval, and then we'll have to, I'm sure with preliminary prices I've got, we will be requesting to move some of the money from some of those other categories.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Amber, that's all I have for the security then.
All right. Thank you, Lance, for providing that.
You're welcome.
Troy, are you still with us, and do you have anything else to add?
Oh, I was just curious. Lance, I might have missed it. Did you talk about the security conferences and maybe one coming up? And I just wanted to know if the district's been taking advantage of any security conferences that we've put on in the past, and has it been of any value to you?
Well, I do apologize, Troy. I did miss that, and as Tony and Reen both know, they've been to some of those security conferences, and there will be up and coming security conferences that we look forward to seeing you guys there.
Do you know when those are going to be and where? And
Lyman would love to host one.
No, currently we do not have the any currently scheduled or locations picked out, but we would anticipate those would be occurring probably sometime towards the beginning of the new school year. So I don't know that we will see that this summer, but it'll probably be next fall that we will see another security conference. And like I say, the location has not been determined yet, because we have not yet determined exactly what the focus will be of this conference yet.
Okay. Yeah, the two that myself and Reen's been to have been very beneficial and very helpful, I thought.
Okay. Yeah, the one other note I'm going to make that Lance hadn't mentioned, so far the potential $4.9 million, the way the legislation is currently written, does not identify the funds to be going to all 20 priorities. It only currently is saying 8, but we're in hopes that that would get corrected by the time that would make it to final votes in the houses. So currently the intent was to be for all 20 priorities, but right now it's just at 8.
Where is that in the legislative process right now?
I was just in the process of looking that up as we spoke here, and I don't see it at the moment.
Has it passed one of the? Has it passed one of the houses? Because I don't remember seeing that one, so I don't.
I do not believe it has passed either one of the houses yet. So.
Because that's got to be getting close to. Got to be just about out by their time frame. I think third readings have to be done in one of the House of Origin by today or tomorrow, I thought.
I believe that's tomorrow. As we continue on here, I'll take a look and see if I can find that.
Okay.
So with that being said, and I know Paul will give us a little update here as soon as he finds it, we're going to go ahead and move into capacity. And as you see here, we show the capacity of the October 1st number of 2018 against the building's capacity, showing the percent. The next graphic you're going to see, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of blow this up so that we can all see it. This is the projection list going forward. And as you see, the 10 years of trailing data going into the projected enrollments, it does show a little bit of you're pretty solid across there, but just going a tick down in terms of trend. However, if you look at your kindergarten numbers through 2009 through 2018, you kind of stay right in that. You dip down this year from 59 to 50. But you've been all the way up to at least 66 through the years prior to.
Amber, can you blow that up just a little bit bigger, please?
No problem. Okay, I'm afraid if I go any figure it's going to blow off.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
That's better. So,
yeah. With that, he said, you'll see that over here on that right-hand column is your average survival rate. And as you look at the averages going from your kindergarten into your first grade, it shows what the average is coming into that next year. And then that helps us predict what your trend is going to be going forward into the projected enrollments. If you look at your overall enrollments over the years, you've been kind of bouncing from that 690 all the way up to probably about 750 is like one of your highest peaks. And currently you're at 727. Okay. Troy, is there anything else that you would like to bring up at this point?
No, I don't think so.
District, is there any things that you see that you would like to comment on?
no.
Okay. So we did bring in the statewide list here, and that just shows us those that are at high capacity, medium capacity, and low capacity. With that, we've got different studies going on with different districts in terms of those at high capacity and finding non-constructive remedies or other options that could be able to address these. As we say, the district does have sufficient capacity for the enrollment of their students. And currently there is no charters in the district, so we will go on to the next section. When we get into condition, we talk about the FCI scores, which is the Facility Condition Index, and we will look at the building scores. As you see here represented is the statewide list of educational buildings, at least through 3.2. And the next section you will see in representation is the support buildings. Again, it's the top portion of the list, at least through 3.2. And then we bring in your district as it stands with the 2016 FCI scores compared to your 2012 on your educational buildings. It does represent the year that they were built and the square footage.
Amber, while we're on that one, you'd mentioned during the pre-meetings, when is that group coming back around to redoing the condition scores?
The group will be coming back around, and I'm going to jump right to that since you're asking at this point. We do have the proposed schedule here of the next condition assessment. They will be out in the field in the summer of, or spring and summer of 2020. And as you see here, by state statute, we are required every 4 years to do an assessment, and the previous assessment was 2016. The department itself will go out and procure a professional service. Once we get that procured for the state, we will start working with them. We will set up some training about March, April for districts as well as SCD staff. And we will probably have that about in Casper at the time. It should be about 4 hours of training for those that will be involved with the assessments and measurements. And
So,
then they...
Amber, who will be involved with that? Will that be just selected people from the districts, or will one person from, or just people that you pick or volunteer to do that from the districts?
Troy, would you like to answer that, or are you available?
Sure. Yeah, we invite whoever wants to come from the districts. We usually have it in Casper, kind of central. Maybe we could have it in Riverton, who knows? But yeah, we just invite all the districts. You can have as many people come, and we go through the tool. As obviously, we make sure everybody understands how that tool is used, and then we emphasize, make sure that you guys, when those assessors get on site, that you're with them the whole time, providing them the best information so we can get these as accurate as possible.
And Caroline, if you recall, back when I was trying to explain what the condition reference guide for the work code that had the definitions, I showed you where that reference guide was on our website. This type of training is what they go through to actually explain what those work codes mean and how they do the assessments on those work codes. So if you're interested in learning more about the definition of the work codes, as Troy said, I would recommend going as well to understand that.
And then also, is the scope going to be different this time than what it was 4 years ago? Are we basing it on the same types of things, or are those condition scores going to be changed a lot just because scope's changing?
We plan on having the same scope. We'll probably, not probably, in addition to going out and assessing, we'll also have the teams go out and confirm updated usages of spaces so that the calculations for capacity eventually are as accurate as possible. So that'll be an additional thing the teams will do.
Okay. Tony, any other further questions on this?
Not right now. I don't think so, Reed. Do you?
Nope.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to...
I guess my other question would be, can you go to that training and not have to go around to other school districts and do the assessment, but just to go to that training and see what to expect when they come around?
Yeah, there would
Right.
be.
I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, there would be no obligation on your part to go to any other school district. The intent is for you to be trained so when they come through your facilities that you have the ability to join in and understand exactly what the review will be. But there would not be any intent for you to go to any school district other than your own for the assessment process.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think you might be thinking back in the 2009 era when, or a little bit before that, I can't remember, when, school districts, I was a part of that too, and we kind of helped assess buildings across the state and kind of a team effort between districts, SFC at that time. There's nothing like that now. The consultant is hired to do 100% of the work there on the assessment. Our jobs are, my job is to make sure, and SCD is make sure that the process goes well. You guys have plenty of opportunity to verify the data and make sure you gave correct data, and look at the scores and understand what those scores are based on. But other than that, no, you're just committed to your district, and we'll accompany them when they show up.
Will we get an email letting us know when that meeting is?
Oh, absolutely. We'll bother you.
Thank you.
So as you show and indicate, here was also the support buildings of that, and you indicated there was no changes. We're going to go into major maintenance. We worked together to go over work orders from the past and make sure that we adapted to and changed the correct status that they are currently in. You've been working with Lance to put in new work orders to the best of your knowledge for the next year. And we ran the major maintenance work orders that have been uploaded in your facility plan in the database. So with that, we've got, oh, go ahead.
Amber, while we're on major maintenance, where is that bill at as far as funding goes for the next couple of years? And I guess I'm trying to figure out why it went for 4 payments instead of 2, and where that bill is in the legislative process. And can you give me, did that 4 payments come from the school facilities, or did that come from the legislature?
Troy, I'm scrolling down.
From the No problem. That came from the legislature. What the state of Wyoming's looking at is basically the school districts can earn interest off of it, or the state can earn interest off of it and spread it across all state entities. So the motive is for the state to keep a hold of that and to make interest off of it. in order to make those state dollars stretch farther.
And I understand
And
that, but what it could do in the future, right now, our balance is in good shape just because of our component. But I could see if we wouldn't have got a few of those component level funding, some of our projects that we would be doing because of this 4 payment thing would be putting some of our projects off 1 or 2 years.
That's correct. Some
That's
districts
the
will
big
face
part
that.
I see with that bill.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, no denying it. That's what's going to happen to some districts if they don't have a big enough pot saved up and then can continue on. So we get that, but that's obviously that's a legislative decision, and just like you, we're recipients of their actions.
Has the school facilities gone to their committee meetings and testified on what it could do to districts by doing that?
Our legislators, I think, are very familiar with that. When we are asked to give testimony to any legislative body, we do, but we don't vie on behalf of districts. We're to be a neutral party as a state agency, so we do not speak on behalf of districts, but rather if we're asked specific questions, impact and stuff like that, we do give information, and I believe the legislators are fully aware of that impact. I think we had that discussion at the select committee. Maybe, Paul, you can remember, but I think that was very understood, and I think it was expressed by school districts at that meeting, and the legislators, it sounds to me like, are continuing to move forward to do that simply because they're looking at it as an optional opportunity another opportunity to gain more money. I can't remember, Paul, can you remember? I was thinking it was like 50 or 60 million that the state would make off of that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm totally wrong.
Yeah, it is a significant dollar amount based on the average time that major maintenance funds do remain in account. But to follow up with what Troy said, yes, there have been a lot of both in committee discussions with them about the identification by districts of the concerns related to being able to fulfill their obligations to larger contract amounts. And also there have been some discussions between our administrative staff and individual legislators about it. So they are fully aware of the concerns that have been stated to us. But as Troy said, we really have no power and actually are discouraged from lobbying on behalf of either our part, the legislature's part, or districts. So unfortunately, we can only answer the questions that we're asked.
And okay, I understand that. And like we've emailed our legislature and let them know our concern, but one doesn't have much power, compared to the whole body. So sometimes in committee meetings, if it's mentioned, it can help.
Yeah, well, and we did identify, I know our director did identify at the point where it initially was introduced that there was some concern about that based on, and we didn't talk about anything further than what we knew that individual component projects funded with major maintenance sometimes exceeded the amount that would be available within a quarter, and that it could potentially prevent them from being able to go forward during a summer period with work because they have to wait until they collected funds, perhaps until a year later. So we did identify that concern, and we haven't seen any change in the language since that point in time. So unfortunately, we aren't privy to their caucus comments, so we really don't know where they're headed.
Okay, thank you.
So I kind of jumped down. We did have a list of those bills that was provided to us and what they're currently standing in here in the facility notes under the legislative section. And we'll come back to this and talk about those here in a moment. But I'm going to roll back up to the major maintenance section and talk about that. We show here listed under the major maintenance, the 680 report is the first thing that we see. showing what your payment was in the previous year, what your ending balance was, the total expenditures through 2018. You currently do not have an 8% balance. Your 10% enhancement balance is over 215,000, and that your 10% security ending balance is just over 115,000. The next couple tables you'll see are your major maintenance categories broken down by expense for the 2018, and the next table you see is being broken down by building, by category, and by expense. Any comments on that section, District?
No.
The next thing that we have inserted here is the low condition scores, and as you were able to bring in some information, most of the time that legislators ask us, are the districts addressing their low scores? And currently you have no ones. There are only a few twos, but yet you answered some of the threes going forward to indicate how you are taking care of your buildings within your district. We brought in a graphic just showing the rating scale for those that needed that. We just talked about the assessment condition assessments and that schedule, so we'll move on to the next thing. The next portion here that you see is the component projects, and as you see here is the request in 2019. This is the list that was districts were able to submit in September. A committee of districts was put together to rank those in November. This is going before commission next week in February to be considered. Once that is considered, it will go in front of legislation to determine the funding, and the amount of funding will determine how far down the list we will be able to address components. You currently indicate that the district has no component requests, and you're currently maintaining your buildings with available major maintenance funding. District, any other comments on this section?
No.
Troy, did you have any comments?
No.
We got into the next section is the legislation, and bear with me, this is pretty small, but we will blow it up as far as I can without losing it. Raj,
just to say, Amber, on this one, this was updated last Thursday, so obviously legislation moves quick, so it's outdated, but it's just a snapshot as of last Thursday.
And I was attempting to follow up on that issue I brought up before in regard to the potential $4.9 million funding. One of the reasons it became a little more challenging for us to track is that the House and the Senate put it in two different bills, and the House version, for whatever reason, has essentially discontinued to be shown on the legislative website, and I at this point can't find where it is. It's kind of gone dark. On the Senate side, it has not been updated yet, so it still indicates the 8. So I unfortunately can't give you a good answer on that because it's just not very clear on the legislature's site right now where those bills are. It's unfortunately beyond my finding.
I know last night I got on to listen. I know Brandon Finney was going down to the House side. They were discussing, and I believe it was I want to say it was House Bill 64. They were addressing that last night. I'm sorry, Senate. Senate 64. I had the right number, just the wrong side. But they were addressing it late last night. I didn't listen to the whole thing because I was tired of trying to wait for them. But we didn't have quite any update at this moment, okay? You feel,
Yeah, that's the best we can answer at this point. We try our best to keep up with them, but sometimes they even leave us in the dust. We can't follow them.
yeah. We have a list of bills here. And,
So that was Senate File 64, and what was the House bill number?
It was in House Bill 1.
it was in House Bill 1 listed.
So that's the budget bill.
Yeah.
Right.
So
No wonder it's lost.
exactly. And it would eventually have to be rectified in committee, especially, and then to top it all off, the Senate's got it in 2 different bills.
Right.
So they've got it in the Senate File 1 and Senate File 64 then.
Oh, it's in 64 and shoot, what's the other one?
When I was
That
reading,
one's on the very bottom, Amber.
okay.
Senate File 103. No, that's state capital construction.
Amber, I think I put it on the very bottom of that table. If you go to the very bottom one, I think it was that one.
137? No, that's not it. House Bill 1 is down there.
House Bill 1, and then we have Senate 137, which is the state budget negotiations incentive, which is the agency efforts to revert funds, talking about that.
Yeah.
We'll have to, if we get more further information, Tony, I will try to get back with you. I'll talk with Brandon and see if he has some insight to help us, since he was there last night.
Okay, that'd be fine. Thank you.
So I'm going to briefly, unless Paul feels like he wants to go through these bills. Okay.
No, I'll have to admit I've been preoccupied. I haven't been tracking.
Please follow along, and I'm just going to briefly go over a summary of these bills. The House Bill 8 is our major maintenance multiplier, from changing it from a 2.0 to at least a 2.5 going into the future years of 2023. It also talks about which will be an increase in major maintenance expenditures for school capital construction accounts. The increase will be is to be 20 million in the year of 2020, an additional 600,000 or 3% each year therefore after. Senate has received it for introduction in January of 28. Then we get into House Bill 52. This is a public works and contracts bill. It talks about the architects to write the specifications for products that are available from Wyoming resident suppliers. This was introduced by the Senate on the 29th of January. House Bill 65 was talking about procurement amendments. This bill has kind of got on both sides, since our department has merged with construction management. This is kind of helping us, as one of our tasks that we were asked to is to get things to mirror each other in terms of procurements and et cetera to go forward. This bill will help the department to move forward and execute the statute requirements that was adopted by the capital construction procurement policies and standards to ensure compliancy with the policies and the standards of the state agencies and the school districts using any state funds or capital construction projects. Many of the values used in the statutes are outdated, and this bill will bring these values to a current and present value in today's dollars. It talked about bonds going up to 50K. It talked about A&E procurements would be done at 50K. School district construction going up to 50K, and all advertisements shall be 2 week minimum of 2 weeks. And that gives us so that there wasn't different levels of different things going on. That was introduced to the Senate, was received and introduced on 25th of January. House Bill 78 is the education major maintenance funding. This is the one that we were talking about on appropriations. This involves both sides again. It is a major maintenance payment that is to be distributed in 4 quarters. Senate introduced and referred to Senate, what is that? Senate SO2 appropriations on 30th of January. You know
SO2.
SO2, what he is referring to by SO2? Is it second reading or is it second what?
No, actually, I'm not too
I'm
sure.
not sure what. Troy, do you know what the SO2 is referring to?
It's like a, I don't know if it's a committee within the House or within the Senate.
Okay. So it's been referred to SO2 appropriations, and that was the 30th of January. We've got House Bill 79. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I will.
He's talking to somebody.
Okay. House
Sorry,
Bill,
guys. I was checking in. Sorry.
no problem. We've got House Bill 78 here. School facilities interfund loans. It talks about the interfund loans may be made to the school account from legislative establishing reverting funds. It was Senate introduced and referred to SO4 education on the 30th of January. House Bill 80, that's the capital construction supplemental budget. School CapCon, House introduced and referred to the House or HO2 appropriations on the 14th of January. And then we've got House Bill 94, and that's construction contracts and provisions and seeking council review. This went to this, was Senate reviewed for introduction on the 31st of January. Now, House Bill 108, contractors and final payment provisions restructure, and that was modifying final settlements, payments, and construction procedures, updating bonds and requirements, requiring distribution by direct to the prime contractor securing the bond. That was Senate reviewed for introduction, and that was the 30th.
Hey, Paul?
Yeah.
Sorry, Amber. Isn't that one kind of basically just getting us out of the middle of fights between the contractor and the district? That pretty well just leaves it between the contract between the two. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The intent is to basically get the district to be the party of responsibility on that, and the state is just the third party funding agent. We're not the contracting party that would essentially be arguing those issues. That's basically leaving that to the districts.
Right, and then putting it back on the bond where it should be for any discrepancies or arguments of payment or whatever the need is.
Right, because there's been a preponderance of these that they essentially keep looking to the state to fund, and we're basically saying no. There's mechanisms in the contract to utilize them.
Okay, thank you.
District, was there anything, comments on those previous bills I talked, and I'll start again here in a moment if you didn't have any comments.
No, I'm fine with the ones you've covered.
Okay. So continuing on, I've got 152 here, and it's Wyoming Underground Facility Notification Act amendments. This act is relating to the underground public utilities facilities, modifying the requirements of architect engineer plan to call for excavation. I've heard a little bit about this one, and that is to say that there is a larger fine possibly tied to it if they do not do the location and they run into any of the utilities that could possibly be.
Right, and the concern we've heard from the engineering and architecture community is the fact that they're not the ones making the one call. That's the contractor, but they're holding responsible a party who isn't even actually doing that work.
So with that being said, we get into the Senate file 49, and this is county zoning authority with public schools. This is no zoning resolution or planning shall restrict the location, use, or occupancy of a private school. This is House bill received for introduction of January 25th.
This was basically related to a case in Teton County where a private school was being treated differently than a public school in the zoning department, and it would prevent that from happening in the future. Private schools would get the same treatment as a public school.
So we get into Senate file here 53. This is government contract labor organizations, prohibiting government entities from including specific terms related to labor organizations agreements and construction related contracts. This was House received for introduction in the 23rd of January. We go into House Files 57, and it talks about public records that public records shall be received in 10 days if mutual agreement between the requester and the agency are not reached. The potential or penalties up to a felony if the agency does not deliver. This is on the Senate second reading. It was passed on the 31st of January.
And they did remove the felony provision in it, and it did knock it down to a misdemeanor. And they did provide a few more opportunities to renegotiate. The dates went up to 30 days, and then there is the possibility to negotiate beyond 30 days. But the concern for districts, which would be an equal concern for us, is we have to designate a party who's responsible for that. So I mean, somebody is going to have on their head always this possibility of a misdemeanor if some question gets asked of either one of our district or us, that if we don't have an answer for it quick enough, we can essentially get a fine.
And I know on that one, there's other agencies that are quite concerned of the way it's written, right, that the impact on what their workforce and work hours could be able to provide some of that information, right, in a timely manner. House File 64 is, this one is specific to school safety and security that we mentioned earlier. WDE consultation of the Homeland Security, the AG's office, the state fire marshal, as well as our department with school or state construction department, creating a model school safety and security guidelines. This is House received and introduced the 25th of January.
And the idea behind this one is that there would be a singular safety and security package out there, because currently we have security guidelines that we have put out that have been approved by our commission. But what this would do would put out a legislatively directed package that would be consistent across all districts and also charter and private schools as well. And then the WDE would actually be the one who would be the administrator of that guideline, in lieu of currently our commission's guideline would be supplanted by that.
So the next bill we talk about here is the Senate File 74, that is professional service procurement, resident firms for A&E firms have a physical office in Wyoming, and 50% of the contract shall be done with staff or contractors employed in Wyoming. This is House received and introduced. Introduction was on the 28th of January. Then we've got SJ Bill 1. This is the state and federal school trust lands exchange. This is the exchange of landlocked state trust lands and other lands under the jurisdiction of federal government that could allow the Wyoming Board of Land Commissioners to generate significant revenue to funding public schools and other designated institutions by the state of Wyoming. This House was House introduced and referred to HO5 Agriculture on the 14th of January. And I believe I heard some discussion last night on that specific bill, so I don't know where it stands.
Yeah, I don't either. It's been under a lot of discussion, but they haven't taken any more specific actions on it.
Right. So then we get into Senate File 103, and this is capital construction, broadening the scope of the select committee where construction management and SFE School Facilities Division will both report to the committee. This is House received and introduced on the 28th of January.
That looks like that's probably going to occur. So what had been specifically for school facilities will be expanded to include state facilities as well. So it means that select committee's mission would expand significantly. We're not exactly sure how it would be structured, but it would definitely change. That we used to have a singular focus to the select committee, and now it would be expanded to include other agencies and other facilities throughout the state as well.
Okay, so the next thing we get into is Senate File 105. This is the procurement, pricing, and transparency. A public entity shall require any person submitting a bid or negotiating a contract for service or supplies to disclose to the public entity within 5 most recent completed or ongoing contracts of similar type. This is Senate placed on the general file, and that was the 25th of January is the last update we have here. JA 7 is the school capital construction constitutional amendments. This is a joint resolution proposing a amendment to the Wyoming Constitution to transfer responsibility of for the constitution of the school facilities, construction of the school facilities to school districts. This was the Senate introduced and referred to SO4 education on the 18th of January.
Now this one is essentially a mirror with a slight different language change of last year. The concept being that school districts would be required to bring forth their own funds for school facilities. The state's responsibility would be in the equalization so that no one school district had a higher burden than any other. I don't think that it was within the legislation. It doesn't identify how that occurs. It's one of those things that would have to be resolved. We haven't heard that there's much legs under this.
And then we get into House File 137, and this is the state budget negotiations incentive and agency efforts to revert funds. It's Senate place on the general file as of the 31st of January. And then we get into House Bill 1, and this is general government appropriations. This provides appropriations and increase of prior appropriations for the purpose of relating to state-funded capital projects It's House second reading. It passed on the 29th of January. So the next thing that we get into is just a table talking about the supplemental budget of SFB. I'll scroll down here just a moment. So with that, you'll see that we have, with the capacity, this is the satellite high school, talking about the appropriation there. And then we get into the condition of the John C. Schiffer Alternative School. We also have a reappropriation of funds that was for the Shoshone modular that they have indicated. We also have the leases of the Montessori, adjusting that. We have the SFC unanticipated funds, contingency and unanticipated funds dollars here represented. We have security project. This is where they have the listing of the $4.95 million towards those projects listed. Major maintenance adjustment here of $1 million. And then we also have the leases for past charter school, and that is also addressed in that. Any comments there, Troy, if you're still with us? Troy may have had an exit on us, I'm not sure. District, did you have any questions or concerns in this section?
No, we're not involved with that one.
Okay. So currently we have the biennium budget request here. And as you see, I'm going to kind of bring this back down to something more reasonable size-wise. Currently you indicated that you have no requests, and SFC rules and regulations by Chapter 8 and Section 3 of F. At the last biennium, a new prioritized needs index shall be developed by commission, and that needs index shall be based upon which legislative funding remedies shall be determined. A calculation of relative weights of the 3 scoring tools for the purpose of developing that needs index shall be 50% weighted towards the facility condition, 35% weighted towards the facility capacity, and 15% weighted towards the educational stability, or suitability, suitability. Any questions on that portion?
Capacity and your suitability. So.
No.
Yeah, that's one of those things that we're going to be continuing to work on here for a while, because we're still in the process of trying to determine how to do that. There have been a lot of ideas floated around, but there's been nothing that we've landed on yet to basically be able to take into account those 3 different qualities in every decision, so that we can make a consolidated list. So that's something we'll continue to work on. But we're supposed to have something to submit to the legislature by September 1st. So between now and September 1st is when that'll have to be resolved.
District, under unique issues, ideas, concerns, you had listed no issues, ideas, or concerns at this time. Is there anything else that you would like to bring up before we close out today's meeting?
We're good.
We're good.
Well, Troy, are you still there, or are you gone? Seeing that Troy's kind of had to leave us for that other meeting, Lance, is there any other questions or comments that you would like to make at the end?
I don't have any, Amber. Thank you very much. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, guys, over at UIN06. and gals, and Renee.
I don't think Green's ever going to live that one down.
Not if we can help it, huh, Tony?
All right, well, finishing on that note, thank you, district, for all that you do and all of your understanding with me. Appreciate your guys' hard work, and thank you again. So I am going to sign off for today's facility plan.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
This conference will now